Hello there and welcome to Council of Geeks. My name is Nathaniel Wayne. It's time for the Roundtable and I'm joined by Just Ryan. Hey, I may do with what I can get sometimes.
I've been called worse than Just Ryan, so...
This is very true.
Yeah.
On this very show,
Sure.
in fact. So, with this being a month that is seeing the release of two major films about magic users, we got Doctor Strange, we've got Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I just thought we'd have a general discussion about wizards in movies, just kind of see where this thing goes. Now, I haven't seen Doctor Strange yet because life keeps happening, I don't have the time, and I could have gone and seen this tonight. Why do I have you over here?
Just Ryan.
But yes, so I have not seen Doctor Strange yet, so we're not going to talk about that.
Nope.
At the time of recording, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them hasn't been released yet. By the time I get this out, maybe it will have been, but obviously we haven't seen that either. So this is a more generalized comment, and we'll just see where this thing goes. Ryan, in general, wizards in movies.
When you suggested this topic, I was kind of like, all right, I don't know if I can really think of a lot of wizards. And then I actually started putting my mind to it, and I was like, there's actually a lot of great wizards that I like from movies and everything. And I started doing, like, once I got past the Gandalf and Dumbledore, although nothing against either of those characters, I started bouncing off of all these different characters. I was like, ooh, I really like that guy. So yeah, they can be a source of, obviously, dramatic, like awe-inspiring when you see a power used that you haven't seen before in terms of magic. They can often be a source of comedy because frequently they're old white men.
Yeah.
And kind of bumbling and sort of absent-minded despite having all their power. So it does depend on how they're used, although I think a lot of times they are used well. So
Yeah, they can be. I mean, I think you mentioned the dual elephants in the room, which are Dumbledore and Gandalf. General thoughts on these guys?
I do like them both. If I had to pick one, I think Gandalf is probably my favorite wizard, sorcerer type of character in all of these different movies. There's just something primordial about him. He just feels like the perfect distillation, the mold that everybody else is cut from.
He kind of is. He is, of those two, he's the more harder edge. I think Dumbledore is a little bit like if you crossed Gandalf with Santa Claus, you end up with Dumbledore.
Right.
Now, I love Gandalf, and now what I'm about to say, I will fully call it. This is nostalgia speaking. I admit that. My preferred Gandalf is actually the animated version from the 1970s, the Hobbit movie, which was voiced by John Huston. And
It's been about 30 years since I've seen it, so I can't. John Huston voicing Gandalf, just giving some of those lines.
Ian McKellen was great, and there's no one else who I would have put in that role at the time that the live-action movie was made. But John Huston's voice is almost indescribable. And at one point they even have him reading, in the book, their songs, but they have him reading lines of Tolkien poetry, talking about the dragon coming in. And it just sounds so epic just to hear it through his voice. And there's something about his Gandalf that feels a little bit more dangerous than McKellen's Gandalf a little bit. Like when Bilbo first meets him, he effectively just calls down lightning and tells Bilbo to shut up. It's like, whoa, okay. I grew up on that.
Sure.
So I'm not saying it's objectively better, but it kind of it hits me a little more.
And my Gandalf experience was very different because I know I've seen the animated Hobbit, but it didn't leave the same lasting impression on me. I am not a Tolkien reader. I haven't read The Lord of the Rings. I have tried 3 times to read The Hobbit, and I have never finished. So when I saw The Fellowship of the Ring, I really had no idea what I was getting in for. I had a general idea. I knew some of the names. I knew the basic bare bones plot, but really didn't know that much of it. And Ian McKellen surprised me a lot, just with the level of comedy, but then partway through when he takes out a sword, and he's got a sword and his staff, when he's on the bridge and he slams the staff down and calls out the Balrog, "You shall not pass." I was like, I've never seen a wizard like this. We're on a different level. And just the movies after that, with the next two, just seeing him fight, seeing him, like, that is, because he presents such a sort of stately, up until that point, a very sort of wizened, he just seems more intellectual, more cerebral. But once you see him fight, you're like, no, this is a guy who has earned, every breath that he's taken in his 1,000 years of life or something.
Well, sort of initially, because when I think about it, wizards have a tendency to fill a background, sort of, they're a living resource. They tend to be a living resource of either knowledge or like a very specific use of power, but it's very rare that they're front and center for what you mentioned early on, which is that they tend to tip the scale so much that it becomes an overpowered issue. Dumbledore very much takes a background role. Pretty much every depiction of Merlin is more of a background role. My own preferred Merlin is from Sword in the Stone.
I was going to bring that one up too. I love that version of Merlin. He made my list. Like my top 3. He was just like, I was like, I love that Merlin. With the owl Archimedes. He's got the song. He beats Madame Mim in a duel, like a shape change duel, by turning into a germ.
That is my personal favorite magical duel.
Yes.
And in case you haven't seen Sword in the Stone, the idea is that rather than like throwing fireballs at each other, they turn themselves into different creatures and different animals.
They had to agree, like, she can't turn into any, like, pink dragons or something. She turns into a purplish dragon. But when she goes high, he goes small, turns into a germ.
Which is also kind of bending the rules, but he did turn into a living thing, but he turned into a disease and made her bedridden.
Right. He did not disappear, he just went microscopic. So, I love that depiction of Merlin, too. That is my favorite.
I love the whole thing that Merlin's kind of living his life in reverse. So he keeps talking. He's so frustrated, stuck in the Middle Ages, because he knows what the future is like and all the stuff that he doesn't have, like indoor plumbing, all the stuff that he knows will exist, but he's stuck without it. And I love that frustration.
Yeah.
Now here's something because I thought about Willow. It's not necessarily a great movie, but it made me realize something, which is that there are movies about wizards. There are movies about magicians. Rarely do the two cross paths, and they kind of do in the form of Willow. And the reason they don't mix is generally you're either dealing with magic is real or magic isn't.
Right.
And when you're dealing with magicians, it's all fake, it's all illusion. When you're dealing with wizards, magic is real. Right. But Willow is interesting because this is a world with magic.
Right.
And there are wizards.
Right. But our titular character is more of a sleight of hand trickster.
He's a magician, and he actually wins by doing a sleight of hand trick, which I kind of love.
That's perfect.
One of the really strong things about a movie that is, I think, better than a lot of people give it credit for, but it's not a great movie, but I do kind of like that mixing of real magic and fake magic, because it doesn't happen a whole lot.
And another thing about Willow is it seems to sort of flip the genre. If you look at something like The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings or Sword in the Stone, where, as you said, the wizard is more of a resource character. He's more of the sidekick or the mentor to help our warrior character, who are our more sort of physical action type of hero on his journey. Willow is almost the reverse. Mad Mardigan is our sword-fighting, like, warrior character.
And he's the sidekick.
And he is the sidekick for our aspiring young wizard, sorcerer, magician character. So it's a nice little flip.
It's funny. Willow's one of those movies that the more I think about it, the more I love almost every idea and concept at the heart of it. It's just, it didn't quite hit everything at the level it needed to really drive it all home.
And that's something else we can talk about, sort of the iconography of certain wizards, the look of them, and how they distinguish themselves.
Well, the hat, a funny hat and a beard is kind of the thing.
But I can take something the complete opposite direction, sort of, still like the robes, but ditch the hat, ditch the beard, and look at a character in the Harry Potter movies, Severus Snape, who I think steals the show, and he would be my favorite wizard in those movies, played in no small part due to Alan Rickman's performance. Being able to sort of like enjoy other people's pain, this Schadenfreude it doesn't seem malicious, it seems like just sort of, there's just like so much hate inside him.
The impression I get of him is the world has crapped on him so much, he enjoys seeing it crap on somebody else for once.
Yeah. And he makes magic look effortless, which, whether that's part of the character, the performance, or what he interpreted, I mean, it is sort of based in like a world where magic isn't really special in the world of Harry Potter, because when all of your characters have it.
Well, certainly compared to the younger characters who and it was one of the things that was really good about that. You can see it looks like it's hard when the kids do it, but then you have someone like Snape just bat a spell that was cast away like he's swatting a fly.
When he actually has to train Harry to do something, and it's Oh boy, you never want a teacher like that.
No.
Also, thinking about the fashion and sort of the look of wizards and sorcerer type of characters, I mean, I gotta go with, I don't know his name, but there are some who call him Tim. It's crazy. He's John Cleese.
Yeah.
He's got like ram's horns.
So, yeah, just in case anyone...
Funny hat, beard.
Yeah, funny hat, beard. In case anyone didn't catch the reference, we're talking about John Cleese playing...
Tim the Enchanter.
Tim the Enchanter.
From Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
And one of the most inconsistent accents ever put. Like, sometimes he is so Scottish. And sometimes I think John Cleese just forgot.
Nasty, big, pointy teeth.
I warned you, didn't I? You didn't listen.
What an eccentric performance.
Oh, did you see Howl's Moving Castle?
I did not.
He is young and handsome and a complete coward.
Okay.
Like, his whole deal, the reason his castle moves is so that the local king can't find him to conscript him into the army.
Okay.
It's questionable how much of his issue is cowardice and how much of it is like conscientious objector. Okay. It's probably 6 of one, half dozen of the other. He's almost an obstacle as much as a companion to the main character, just because he's so focused on himself and has so little regard for what else is going on. I think one of the general things I kind of like about magic, as opposed to when things get more quote-unquote grounded, when it comes to questions of like sci-fi versus fantasy,
sure.
I think aesthetically I like sci-fi better, but storytelling I favor fantasy, because fantasy does not feel the need to over-explain itself. And when you deal with magic, I kind of like being embroiled in a world that I know is bigger than I will ever understand. And that magic by its nature kind of is that, because it always seems like wizards are playing by rules, but I don't know what they are.
And you don't need to.
And yes, and more to the point, I don't need to know what their rules are. They just work.
Right.
Because magic.
Yeah, I tend to favor sci-fi for a lot of the same reasons, but I guess when it comes to I'm also able to just sort of understand that when magic comes out, I don't need to know the mechanics of it. There aren't supposed to be mechanics of it. I'm able to suspend my disbelief. And that's the thing. With science fiction, I think part of the science in there is, okay, there are rules. There are certain, physical properties that even if I don't know them, I understand that there is a rule for all of this stuff. And with fantasy, it's like, no, with magic, like, there doesn't have to be rules. It kind of breaks the rules. That's the whole point of it. We didn't really talk that much about Harry Potter and that universe. I think that the one of the strengths of that series was throwing it, like taking a world where virtually anything is possible, and when you've got a cast of dozens of characters who can do extraordinary things, but putting them through natural sort of paces and struggles and obstacles of just going to school for this and figuring out what that actually means and witnessing what it takes to actually be good at something like this.
The more I think about that series, the fact that that it's paced the way it is through these 7 years of school, or 6 years of school and one year of backpacking in the woods, split into 2 movies.
Study abroad year.
That actually does a lot to defer the problems that can come with having characters deal in magic, because it forces the learning progression to be steady but slow, and it also means that we're focusing on characters who can't do everything yet. And I think that was a really smart way, again, to sort of work around the potential narrative breaking problems that magic can introduce. I guess one other, just because it's a movie that I keep meaning to do an Animation Junkie episode on, and I know you probably haven't seen it. Almost nobody has. Have you seen the movie Wizards? Ralph Bakshi, late 70s movie. It's a movie that was really important to me in terms of my appreciation of animation and kind of why I never grew out of it, because I saw it, I think, in 7th grade, and it was violent, and it was sort of this wake-up call, like, I don't have to outgrow animation. There is animation out there that I can continue to enjoy, even though I'm too old for Disney. So it was an important film to me. It doesn't hold up the way I wish it did, going back and watching it, but it's an interesting concept because it's actually, technically, it's a post-apocalyptic movie, because it's set in a future where the human race has wiped itself out via nuclear annihilation. What humans are left are badly mutated. And basically, after the humans are effectively gone, fairies and dwarves and elves and wizards went, oh great, we can come back now. And so it's a more or less standard fantasy world, but there are guns and tanks and whatever around, but they're ancient artifacts being used by the villain and his army. The titular wizards there's Avatar and Black Wolf, who are actually brothers. Again, it's one of those ones with some cool ideas, but in an odd way, very little straight up magic from the actual wizards. Because they're more in leadership roles. But just sort of an odd one that I wanted to talk about because the title is Wizards.
Well, I'm going to do my diatribe about the Fred Savage Nintendo movie, The Wizard.
Damn it! Go ahead. I'll yield the floor if you actually want to talk about it.
Oh, I'm done.
So you had mentioned that you actually did kind of put together like a top 3 or something. Were there any that we didn't already talk about?
No. I would have had Merlin from The Sword and the Stone, probably at number 3, Snape at 2, and Gandalf at number 1, with Tim the Enchanter as the floating either runner-up or number 1, sort of depending on what mood I'm in.
And I consider that fair. Even though I arranged for this, I didn't bother with the top 3 because I'm not that organized. So yeah, tis the month of Wizards at the movie theater, and we talked about not the ones in the movie theater. So why are you listening to this again? What's wrong with you? Go outside, do something with your time. And thank you for tuning in. So thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you for having me.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can listen to the whole uncut conversation on the Council of Geeks podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. But in any case, this council is adjourned.